Alright, for Halloween this year, I'm going to be ranking all 9 Nightmare on Elm Street movies from worst to best. Pretty self-explanatory concept here. The only other thing I'd say before I get into the ranking is that this video will contain some, like, mild spoilers. I'm not gonna get, like, super into detail about plot points, but there will be some things that are going to be talked about that are, like, maybe a little deeper into the movies or whatnot. So just be warned about that. But yeah, with that said, yeah, let's jump into the list. So at number 9, in my opinion, the worst movie in this series is the 2010 remake, which was a huge surprise to me because watching some of the other entries that I'm going to be talking about momentarily, I thought, like, there's no way it can get worse than this. And so, like, going into the 2010 remake, I definitely had, I didn't think it was necessarily gonna be good or great or anything, but I certainly didn't think it would be the worst of the series. But my God, this movie sucks. I mean, it is a just miserable, joyless, soulless remake that is very reminiscent of, like, the Friday the 13th remake that came out just a year prior to this one, where it's just like it follows a similar plot to the original, but, like, it lacks all the inventiveness and the fun and the energy and the creativity of that one, where, the original had a very, like, campy, fun 80s B movie type of vibe that, sure, it was a little bit scary or a little bit creepy at certain moments, but overall, it's like a fun movie. You can have a fun time watching it. On the other hand, this one is just a super bleak, self-serious, and just generally unhappy, unpleasant kind of movie experience. And that darker tone affects all the actors here, first and foremost being Jackie Earle Haley, who is replacing Robert Englund for playing Freddy Krueger. And, like, my God, he plays this character without any of the glee or the just fun of that Robert Englund had in the role. And, like, just overall, I hate everything about this Freddy. I hate his look. I hate his personality and his motivations. I hate the voice that Jackie Earle Haley brings to the role. I hate everything about this Freddy. And then the kids that Freddy is terrorizing here are also just incredibly bland and despondent. Everyone just feels so serious and low energy the whole time. And they also don't feel like kids. I mean, all the actors in this look like they are almost 30, and I was shocked when I discovered that apparently they're supposed to still be in high school, I think. Everything in this movie is just so heavy and gloomy all the time. Everyone looks like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh in every single scene. I mean, does Rooney Mara smile once in this entire movie? But don't think that just because the movie is super heavy and it's taking on some heavy subject matter and it's taking itself super seriously, that it can't also be stupid and formulaic and predictable and boring beyond belief, because it is all of those things as well. The horror scenes in this movie are so unscary and just unbelievably bland. I cannot believe that just the low quality, like Tubi quality of the horror scenes in this movie. So, it's not the worst made movie in the series. It's overall like a professional direction job. And, the actors are not as bad as some of the ones that we're going to get into pretty soon. But it is certainly by far, like by a mile, it is the least enjoyable to watch. And so I considered not putting it at the bottom, but I have to, because I just had so little enjoyment watching this movie. At number 8 is going to be Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. This is part 6 from the original series. And I gotta say, this one made me do a bit of soul searching as to, like, figuring out where I would rank it, because when it comes to just the objective quality of the movie, this is easily, by far, the worst in the series. But when it comes to my enjoyment of it, this could literally be ranked in like top 3 in terms of enjoyment, because I had a blast watching this movie. I was laughing frequently throughout the movie. Basically, anytime Robert Englund was on screen, I was laughing at the movie for better or for worse, whether it was deliberate comedy or just laughing at how bad it is. But and so I thought about like actually ranking this one pretty high on the list, but here's the thing, like, as much as I enjoyed it, make no mistake, I enjoyed it because it's terrible, not because it's good. And so the thought of actually ranking this as, like, I don't know, number 3 on the list, I'm just like, I can't do that because it's so bad. So I sort of split the difference by putting it down here. By all rights, it should be below the 2010 remake, but whatever, it's here. This is the point in the series where it goes beyond comedy, it goes beyond anything that can be remotely taken seriously, and it just becomes the realm of just blatant self-parody. I mean, the movie literally opens with Freddy Krueger flying on a broomstick and going,
hee 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 hee, I'll get you, my pretties, and your little souls too.
Like, that pretty much sets the tone for this movie. It is fucking stupid. I mean, there's literally one point where Freddy kills somebody by doing nails on a chalkboard until the guy's head explodes, and that's not even the stupidest kill in this movie. So yeah, it's incredibly stupid. And then they also just make these incredibly pathetic attempts to like explain where Freddy's dream powers come from, and it's very reminiscent of something like Jason Goes to Hell or Halloween 6, where it's just beyond stupid, beyond ridiculous. Nobody is taking this movie or this franchise seriously at this point. It does have some relatively positive elements, like the acting is not as bad as some of the previous entries in the series, and there are a couple moments of comedy that does actually work for me, like where it's trying to be funny and I'm actually laughing at it because it's funny. And you can't say the movie doesn't go out with a bang, so I mean, there's positive-ish elements to it, but really, this is a terrible movie that it goes into the realm of being so bad that it's good. At number 7 is going to be Part 5, The Dream Child. And, this one has an interesting concept where basically the main character of the movie, this chick named Alice, gets pregnant, and Freddy Krueger is infiltrating the dreams of her unborn baby, which is, it's a wacky concept, but it's kind of creative, it's kind of fun, and I would have kind of messed with it, but the execution is just so terrible. I mean, for starters, the movie has a massive tone issue, where on the one hand, the movie has a generally kind of dark and serious tone, and it's taking on some a little bit more heavy subject matter. Like, I mean, the movie literally opens with a scene of implied gang rape, and then, goes on to heavily feature a plot line involving teen pregnancy and stuff like that. So there's some heavier elements and, again, a darker tone. But then in the midst of this, suddenly Freddy Krueger is popping up and making the most terrible, awful, cringy one-liners, and just being generally like goofy comedic Freddy, the kind that we saw in Part 6 almost. And it doesn't match with the movie that is being given to us. And as bad as that is, ultimately the thing that makes this movie bad is just that I can't get invested in the way that the characters are going about trying to beat Freddy, because it's just basically a bunch of supernatural mumbo jumbo, and that's just not satisfying. Some technical explanation about, we have to find the body of Amanda Krueger to free her spirit so that she can enter the dream realm and pull Freddy back into the womb. It's so dumb. Like, who cares? And it just feels like there's no stakes at this point, because whatever they do to Freddy, he's gonna come back in the next movie. Overall, just a bad movie that I did not get very much enjoyment out of. At number 6 is going to be part 4, The Dream Master. And this movie is basically just the definition of mediocre. The first, like, half hour of the movie is literally just, like, watching the Dream Warriors one by one get, like, Alien 3'd, where it's like they're just bringing back these characters from the previous movie in order to kill them. And, you know, sure, maybe it's not as bad as Alien 3, where the characters just get wiped out off screen before the events of the movie. It's not quite that bad, but it's still pretty bad. And, I mean, the protagonist that they replace these Dream Warriors with is even worse, has less personality, is an even worse actor than the Dream Warriors were, which is saying something. And it's just generally not somebody that I even care to follow throughout the movie. And then Freddy Krueger throughout the movie is comedian Freddy, again, like I talked about with part 5. This time, there's less of like a tonal clash, and so when he makes the one-liners, it sort of fits in with the general just comedic, fun, upbeat tone of the movie. But that doesn't necessarily make it good. It doesn't make it good comedy, because the one-liners aren't particularly funny. And then ultimately, by the end, once again, the way that they defeat Freddy is just a bunch of supernatural mumbo-jumbo that doesn't actually have any meaningful connection to the characters. And it's so boring that, to be honest, I literally slept through much of the last half hour of this movie. Like, I would just sort of, kind of doze off and then wake up for a bit, like, see a little bit more, and then fall back asleep. So that should tell you everything you need to know about the quality of this movie. So, yep, pretty mid. Now, the next 3 entries on the list could honestly go in pretty much any order, and I could definitely see the order of these 3 changing depending on the day that you ask me, because they all sort of just follow a similar template, where in the beginning you have a somewhat mildly creative concept, but then the middle of the movie is full of a lot of silliness, and then the third act is just yawn-inducing, and I'm just checked out by the end. And so that's basically the template that these next 3 movies follow, starting with number 5, which is going to be Freddy vs. Jason. And, you know, what I could say about this one is that most of the badness of this movie was sort of baked into the cake from its conception. I mean, it's literally a movie called Freddy vs. Jason, so it's not going to be like a high quality work of art. But, you know, for as much as I dislike a lot of it, it could have been so much worse. Like, if you want to see what this movie could have been, watch Friday the 13th Part 7. That is what this movie could have been. And whatever negative things you could say about this movie, it at least is not anywhere close to as bad as Friday the 13th Part 7. But, you know, once you get past just the inherent silliness and ridiculousness of the concept, the way that they bring Freddy and Jason together in the movie is actually a pretty solid idea. It's pretty creative, where basically they create this world in which Freddy needs Jason in order to come back and start killing again, because basically all of the residents of Springwood have forgotten about Freddy, and so he basically enlists Jason to go to Springwood and start killing a bunch of people, so that then they'll think that it is Freddy, and they will become afraid of him again, and then he will gain his dream powers back once people become afraid of him. And, you know, that's a cool concept in the beginning, but then, like I talked about earlier, once we get to the middle portion of the movie, it is populated by just stupid, unlikable Friday the 13th characters. There's a lot of just bad crappy CGI and special effects. There's also some cool effects, but a lot of bad effects. A lot of goofy, ridiculous, low frame rate, slow motion, and also just some absolutely terrible dialogue, just god-awful dialogue throughout the movie. And so once you get through the middle portion of the movie and you get to the end, you definitely do get what it says on the tin, which is a sort of WWE Freddy versus Jason matchup. But to be honest, by that point in the movie, I'm pretty tired of the whole vibe of what it has to offer. And so the third act is pretty tedious to me. So, the movie has its fun moments, but overall it is an exceedingly dumb movie that is not particularly good. Next up at number 4 is going to be Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. And this one, the filmmakers basically were so desperate to capitalize on the financial success of Part 1 that they didn't really take the time to think about what actually made Part 1 successful, what made it cool, what made it awesome, which was the sort of dream world type thing where Freddy can come after you in your dreams. And so this movie, doesn't really do a good job of capitalizing on what made that movie good. But if you take that element out of the equation and you just look at the movie for what it is and the premise for what it is, it's not a terrible premise. Like, basically, the movie is like a metaphor for a gay guy coming out of the closet, but using Freddy Krueger as sort of the catalyst. And, the whole thing is about, like, Freddy trying to possess the body of this male protagonist in order to get into the real world and start killing people. And, it's not a terrible idea, but when you actually get into what it looks like in the movie, the execution is pretty dumb and pretty illogical. It's overall, the movie is just sort of this, like, confused mess. There's a lot of just B-movie silliness and whatnot. And it does feature at least some fun practical effects and stuff. There's a scene where, like, Freddy's like, "You've got the body, I've got the brains," and he sort of, like, pulls back his skull to reveal his brain. It's like little moments like that are a lot of fun. Like, that's sort of the bread and butter of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. But again, this is becoming a mantra at this point. Once you get to the third act scene in, like, the factory, it just becomes incredibly tedious and underwhelming. And there's also, like, this weird moment. I just had to bring this up. There's this weird moment towards the end where the movie blatantly rips off Invasion of the Body Snatchers with, like, these dogs with human heads, which, like, why is this in here? Literally just blatantly ripping off that movie. So yeah, overall, could have been better in many ways. At number 3 is going to be Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and this one, once again, has kind of a cool concept. It's a very wacky, like, postmodernist concept where it's the story is of, like, the actors from Nightmare on Elm Street in the real world, and so the actors are all playing themselves. And it's a movie where basically Freddy finds a way to infiltrate the real world from out of the movies. And it's a dumb concept, but I could give it to them if they executed it well. They just don't really execute it well. Because as crazy as the concept is, when you actually look at the story structure of the story that they're telling, it is really as basic and unimaginative as can be. It basically just follows the plot structure of a lot of the previous movies. And, it has some cool elements. The nightmare visuals in this one are some of the best in the Nightmare franchise. There's some really cool, creepy visuals and stuff here or there. But then in the non-nightmare scenes, especially in the middle of the movie, it really just drags and is not particularly interesting. And then, on the positive side, again, you have Freddy, who is scary for, at this point, the first time in many, many movies. And so, Freddy isn't as much of a comedian. He's a little bit, creepier, scarier. But once you get to the third act where you're actually getting most of the Freddy action, once again, it's pretty tedious and it's not really all that exciting. And they don't really do that much great work with this scarier Freddy. So, all of that evens out to what, in my opinion, is a pretty middle-of-the-road movie. And, Wes Craven would go on to do this sort of postmodernist slasher idea much, much better with Scream, which is a really great movie. But, this one was like sort of like, I guess, the prototype for Scream. And, yeah, it's not particularly good, unfortunately. All right, at number 2 is Part 3, Dream Warriors. And, this one is often held up as being the best of the franchise, which obviously you can tell that I disagree with. And the thing with this one is that it has some really awesome, really epic ideas and some really cool moments that are held back by some pretty poor performances, bad acting, and then are just ultimately sort of sabotaged by a very unfortunate ending. So on the positive side, I think the psychiatric hospital is a great setting for a Nightmare on Elm Street movie because it adds this extra dimension of powerlessness to these characters where now they are not even in control of their own lives and they can be sedated at any point. And so that adds some extra sort of suspense. And then, nobody believes them. And so that adds this sort of frustration and a chip on the shoulder of some of these characters. And so that leads to some moments that, in theory, should be really awesome. But this franchise has always struggled from the beginning with bad acting. And, this movie is no exception to that. Heather Langenkamp shows up with her signature stank face that she just wears the whole movie and just gives a very subpar performance. And most of the other kids, the Dream Warriors here, are not any better than she is. And then on top of that, you have this whole nun subplot that eventually leads to the ending, which just everything involved with that subplot is terrible. They should have cut all of it, rewritten it, found some better way to end the movie because that, just everything involved with that is terrible. And so it's like, at the end of the day, I enjoy the movie more than I don't enjoy it. I have more positive feelings towards it than negative, but it's just barely on that side of the balance. It's like a light 6 out of 10. So it's a movie that should have been great, but just isn't. Then at number 1, by a country mile, we have the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And, there are some people who will debate whether or not this is the best of the franchise. I've even seen some people rank this like somewhere in the middle of the franchise, which is fucking psychotic. But I'm sorry. For me, there is no debate. Like, it's not even close. There's no debate as to which one is the best. This one is absolutely the best of the series. And this watching of the movies for preparation for this video made that incredibly clear, because the way that I did it was I started with part 2 and I watched through all the sequels, and then at the end I circled back around to the original. And my God, like, what a breath of fresh air the original was after watching through all of these mediocre sequels, because this movie, while it definitely has its flaws, it is actually a good horror film. I mean, for starters, the nightmare sequences, which are the heart of this series, are actually good. And they actually feel like dreams at many points. They follow a sort of dream logic in a way that many of the other nightmares throughout the series don't. And also, this is incredibly shocking for a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, but there's actually some scenes that are genuinely a little bit scary, genuinely a little bit creepy. And I don't think any of the other movies have anything that's even remotely scary in them. This is the only one where there are some scenes that are actually kind of scary. And so that's cool. Now, the non-dream sequences can be very hit or miss. There's some not so great non-dream sequences throughout the movie. And, you know, this franchise, from its inception, from this original movie, has always been a sort of dumb B-movie franchise. So there are elements of the movie that don't necessarily make a lot of sense if you think about them. And, you know, there's some subpar acting. And then, like, the ending has always been a huge head scratcher to me. Like, I don't know what they were thinking with the very end of this movie, but truly some weird decisions there. But honestly, even in the moments where this movie is dumb, even in the moments where it's a B movie, it's dumb in a charming kind of way. And so it's like, I can get behind it more. And also, it is just so much more creative than really any of the other movies in the franchise. Also, another detail I forgot to mention is Freddy himself is the best that he ever is in this movie. Like, he's just the right mixture of gleeful and jokey, but also creepy and scary and menacing. And, like, that mixture, this is the only movie where that mixture is gotten right. So, yeah, easily the best movie in the franchise. If you disagree with me on that one, I don't even know what you're smoking at that point. And so, yeah, that's my number one from the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And with that said, have a Merry Halloween, and I will see you in the next review.